My brother and I have been particularly close. He was kind of the golden child growing up, and he was competitive. If I got a good grade, he got a better one in the same subject. If I bought a game console for myself, he'd beg until my parents forced me to let him use it. He would often hog it to the point I would rarely be able to use it. If I received anything new, my parents would make me share it with him to the point it would end up actually being his. You get the point. I felt like I always had to give up my belongings to him, and every time I managed to do something I was proud of, he'd find a way to overshadow it. Not only that, he would constantly put me down. He could call me all sorts of nasty things, but if I ever said anything rude, my parents would scold me. He barely had to help around the house, while I got stuck with the be responsible speech. Needless to say, I moved out as soon as I could. I loved my family, but it was too much favoritism and it really hurt my self-esteem. It took me years to repair the damage that was done. I didn't think I could accomplish anything. I felt like I wasn't someone worthy enough to be appreciated or loved unconditionally. And then I met my SO. We met through work, and you would think she was descended from angels, beautiful, compassionate, understanding, everything good a person could have. Her embrace was always so warm and comforting that you never wanted to be let go. We both liked most of the same things and could relate so easily. We became close friends within the friend group we had. We would always text each other or go out for coffee, and sometime later, we went on a date. Then another, then another. We fell in love. Through her, I learned I wasn't as unworthy as I thought I was. And then she wanted to meet my family. For obvious reasons, I was hesitant, but she was very eager to meet them. After all, she had already introduced me to her family, so she wanted to meet mine. I had kept the details of my family subtle until then. It's not that I didn't trust her, there are just some things that are hard to tell. So I agreed to let her meet my family. I told my parents, and they were pretty excited. They said that they would host a dinner so that they could meet her. She was beyond giddy to hear about this, so I tried to match her enthusiasm. After all, it had been years, maybe things were different now, and truthfully, I did want my parents to meet my SO. The dinner went fine, my parents were very happy. I did find out, however, that my brother still lives with them and he hasn't changed. Every time I tried to talk about anything, he would have to interrupt with his own story. But the worst part was his treatment of my SO. He kept trying to make creepy advances, giving compliments that she awkwardly would accept, and even blatantly asking her why she was with me. And he followed that by saying that if I ever let her down, she could come to him. After we left, she told me she didn't feel comfortable around him, nor did she like how he treated me. That's when I explained my childhood and she apologized for making me go. I reassured her it was fine, and if she wanted to visit them again, we could. Though maybe not around my brother. She agreed. I asked my parents if they wanted to spend more time together, and they said yes, so we continued to visit. Sometimes we would go someplace else, sometimes it was our place, etc. However, no matter what we tried, my brother was always there and his unwanted advances were never missing. However, no matter what we tried, my brother was always there and his unwanted advances were never missing. I did step in when it was getting too far, asking him to back off. He backpedaled and told me to take a joke, that it was all in good fun. Sometime later, I went to visit my family by myself to tell them that I was planning to ask my SO to marry me. I wanted to make it a surprise for her to have both our families and our friends there to celebrate with us. We had talked about marriage already, so I knew she would say yes. My parents were beyond happy, though my brother looked bored to hide his disappointment. I said I would stay in contact with them to keep planning before taking my leave. The following days were a whirlwind of planning. I was very busy, so I asked my parents if they could pick up the engagement ring I had picked out for my SO. They said yes and would deliver it to me later that day. However, you can imagine my surprise when I saw that the person delivering the ring was my brother. I asked him why he picked it up, and he said that our parents asked him to and he wanted to help out because we're brothers. I was a bit on edge, but the ring was there and everything seemed fine. I proposed to my SO and she said yes. We go through the wedding planning and soon enough we're a few days from the wedding. My SO had gone on a little girls trip with her friends, so I stayed home. Her engagement ring was with me, and as I was inspecting it, I found something odd. Engraved in the inner band were two initials, my SO's and my brother's. You can imagine my surprise and my fury. I should have known, but I didn't want to let him get away with this, so I called my friends and together we made a plan. They knew what a POS my brother was, so they were more than eager. Come the wedding day, we were ready. With my friend's help, we got a new ring. I kept the ruined ring, however, as proof. After the ceremony, my wife did ask me why I bought a new ring, and I assured her that I would explain soon. The wedding is going great, and then comes time for the speeches. I start my speech making sure to let my wife know how much I adore her and appreciate her, that she is my inspiration to be better. I then continue my speech by thanking my brother for showing me what a man shouldn't be. I revealed that he had his initials engraved with my wife's initials into our previous engagement ring, and that I feel sorry for him because he is just an overgrown bully and there was a reason why I was the one getting married today and he is alone. And I told him to never contact me or my wife ever again. After my speech, he was fuming and beet red. He tried to come at me, but all my friends were there to stop him. He was forced out of the wedding and my parents left with him. Everyone was shocked, including my wife, but we continued the wedding and it was amazing. However, after the wedding and the honeymoon, I had dozens of angry texts from my parents telling me I was immature and went too far. That I shouldn't cut off my brother because we're family, and that if I cut him off, they will disown me. They've also involved other family members and they're all blowing up my phone telling me I'm an AH. My in-laws support me, as do my wife and our friends. Did I go too far, or was it justified? Do I follow through with cutting him off or not? Update 1. It's been a few weeks since the wedding. Most, if not everyone, has said that I am not in the wrong to cut off my brother. I called my parents and I explained everything. How they would favor my brother growing up allowed him to bully me into depression and never did anything. But this time, he had gone too far and I didn't want anything to do with him anymore. However, that didn't mean I didn't want a relationship with them. They could still visit us, but not with my brother. They told me I was being dramatic to act like an adult and reiterated that if I cut him off, I'll have to cut them both off too. I said that I have to cut him off, and they told me to never contact them again until I had my head on straight before hanging up. I still have other family members spamming my phone. Even my brother texted me telling me that I'm being sensitive and to grow up. I blocked them pretty quickly. Honestly, I'm pretty depressed about the situation, but my wife, our friends, and my in-laws have been very supportive. It's frustrating that my parents have taken his side yet again, even when he's obviously in the wrong. But I suppose they just favor him too much. Maybe it was for the best. For now, though, it's been really hard. Update 2. So it's been a couple of months. Some things are better. I still haven't contacted my parents or my brother. I decided it was for the best that I stay in NC with them. I didn't need that kind of stress in my life. My parents could keep my brother, but I couldn't keep focusing on them anymore. I had a gorgeous wife who loved me for everything that I am. I had friends that were so supportive, and my in-laws were patient and understanding. It took me a while, but I'm feeling better. I don't want my future kids being raised surrounded by people like them, and I'm going to make sure they never feel like how I felt growing up. As for what happened with the ring, by the way, I couldn't get a refund, so I still have it and I'm not sure what to do with it still. I still sometimes wonder if I did the right thing, but if so many people are telling me that I did, it's likely true. I do miss my parents, but they've shown me that they will always support him over me, and there's nothing I can do about it, so I need to move on. Anyways, that's all the update I have. I hope it gets easier. I'm sure it will. What a MFAH your brother is. You did the right thing cutting them off. Toxic AF family. How your parents continue to support your brother is beyond me. Some people shouldn't be parents. But hey, sounds like you got a good support system. Congrats on the happy marriage. Stay NC with them. It's insane they gave you an ultimatum. Like, WTF. Your brother did something messed up and they sided with them. Crazy people. Wishing you lots of happiness, man. Jesus. It's been a really tough year for us. Early this year, I took a trip to visit my sick mother on her deathbed right before she passed away, which was the most difficult experience of my life. After returning home, my FIL started getting sick and falling down a lot, and he's been refusing to use his wheelchair. His most recent fall has landed him in the hospital with a fractured neck and a softball-sized knot on his head. He has been in the hospital now for 2 weeks, and he only seems to be getting sicker. My MIL has been taking care of him, and she has been understandably overwhelmed and stressed, especially going back and forth between home and the hospital. On one hand, I empathize with her because she is in an awful position and doesn't have much control over her life anymore. On the other hand, she's always been kind of a bitch, and she doesn't make it easy to be there for her. I've always gotten along with my in-laws, but it's not without effort. They are both very opinionated and argumentative people, and they dominate any conversation. I used to make an effort to spend time with my MIL, but it's like the moment she would see me, she'd dump everything on me, and I end up sitting there listening to her rant every day. I ended up distancing myself from her for that reason. That being said, she's been going through a lot lately, so I've been trying to be there for her, which mostly involves just sitting there letting her vent. The other day she said, "I just can't believe how awful this year has been." I said, "Yeah, I know. It's been so stressful for all of us." She chuckled a little bit. "I can't imagine what you're stressed about. At least you get to be home." "Well, my mother did die recently, so I've had a lot on my mind." She was quiet for a minute. I think she genuinely forgot that my mother had died. At this point, I thought she would say something comforting, but nope. Well, that's not as bad as what I'm dealing with. You just don't know. Usually I'm pretty good about keeping my mouth shut. I tried to stay quiet and let it go, but I was heated. I said to her, "I can't believe I just wasted my time sitting here listening to you bitch for 40 minutes just for you to turn around and say something so insensitive to me. I'll keep that in mind. When you're dead, I'll remind Ben that it's not a big deal and it could be worse. Does that sound good?" And then I left. As I was telling my husband about it a few minutes later, she called to tell him what had happened. "I'm calling to let you know that your wife wants me dead," was the only part I heard before I left the room and let him talk to her. When he was done, he was pretty pissed at her about the whole thing. Right now, I'm feeling like an asshole because I feel like I lost my temper when I should have been gentler with her since she's definitely going through a lot. I also feel bad that I created a problem between him and his mother at such a critical time. AITA? NTA. Going through a bad time is no excuse to double down on you being the only person having a bad time when someone reminds you that you're not. She created her own problem by not simply saying, "I'm sorry," or letting it drop, and then going to her baby with a heavily edited version of events to try and cause problems in your marriage when she got called on it. NTA, you put her in her place and she needed that. Going through a hard time isn't an excuse to be an AH. I'm glad your hub stood up to her too. I have a 13-year-old daughter. Me and her dad parted on good terms. I would have her during the week and the weekends, and holidays were his. We were both happy with this arrangement and still did it when we both met our current partners. He eventually moved away to another part of the country, but even so, we still managed to make it work so she could see him. When my daughter turned 12, puberty kicked in and she turned into a little witch. She stopped listening to us and started bullying her siblings and disrespecting me and her stepdad. She would sneak out to parties and start drinking. We took her to get help and even tried therapy. None of it worked. In fact, she got worse. She turned 13 this year, and her new rant to me was she hated us and she wanted to go live with her dad permanently. I rang my ex in tears after she called the police on us and said we abused her when we refused to buy her an expensive phone we couldn't afford. It was a horrible experience having police and the child services coming to my home and questioning us about alleged abuse. She sat through the whole meeting smirking and told them she wanted to stay with her dad. I could tell she didn't care about the stress she put us through. I told my ex what happened and he agreed she should live with him full time. That was 3 weeks ago, and during these weeks my other children are more happy and me and my husband are less stressed. It doesn't feel like we're walking around a time bomb ready to go off. Then last night, my daughter rang me up crying and saying she hates it at her dad's and she wants to come home. And I told her she chose to go there and sorry, but she's going to have to stay there. She kept begging, but I refused as I felt like it's because she got told no to something she wanted and was just acting up. My parents rang me up after I ended the call with her and said, how can I do that to her? It's like I'm abandoning my own child. I said if they feel that way, then feel free to offer their home to her, but I know they couldn't because of their health. They knew that too. They hung up on me and since then have been getting sent nasty texts about abandoning my own child. AITA? NTA. This is not abandonment. This teen thought it was okay to call the police and have you deal with CPS. Now the other parent is also enforcing limits. Of course she hates it there, as she hated it with you. It seems all of you need to find help, good help with family and teen therapy. You have a few more years of this to wade through. NTA, you need to stick to your guns. Your child made a choice, and they need to learn the consequences of their behavior. It sounds like you and stepdad don't have the ability to discipline her the way she needs. If she comes back to you, she will fall into the way she was because you allowed it. This is not abandoning. That would be if you cut off all ties to her now that she lives with her father. As long as you let her come visit, you keep talking with her on the phone, and things like that, you have not abandoned her.